Good evening. Welcome to the Board of Education meeting for Tuesday, November 29th. Before we get started, I just want to address a really big event that's just happened. Obviously, hopefully people saw the email that went out to the community this morning talking about the fact that Dr. Montesano is not going to be negotiating a new contract for next year. There are obviously a lot of details and feelings and opinions and reactions to that one, but for tonight we are going to have a regular board meeting because there's a lot of work that's going to have to be carried on, and we'll deal with and talk about the next steps for where we'll be with that process. Primarily we'll start next week. I think maybe we want to talk a little bit in new business about it tonight, but for now we're going to get started with our board meeting. So this is a meeting that was rescheduled from the 22nd. So we have this meeting this week and we have another one upcoming next Tuesday as well. So all that being said, I guess we'll get started. We will go to announcements.
All right, thank you. Yep. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Some nice things to report to you and the public on. I know it seems like the farewell tour, the never-ending tour of the soccer team, but one more time we will,
I think it should end.
Since we didn't get a chance to do it last week, we want to one more time congratulate the student athletes and the coaches and the parents and everybody who had anything to do with this amazing run that they had to our first ever championship in any sport. It was really terrific, and it was a lot of fun. I happened to be able to ride in a convertible for the parade, so it was a lot of fun for me too. Sirens and everything was all good.
So are they wearing shirts that say "State Champs"? They were given.
They are wearing shirts. I'm not sure if they say "State Champs" or if it was the Final Four stuff, but
Looks like it says State Champs.
Yeah, it could be.
Shout out to Mr. Theodore in the audience.
Yes.
Father of the goalie.
Father of the goalie. Worst position you can be a father of.
As the mother of a previous goalie, I'm feeling your pain.
I'm the father of a lacrosse goalie, I understand. And one nice thing that the soccer players did, they got to go down to, or up to Hillside to visit with the younger students and share in their success, and met with some of their former teachers. It was really, really nice.
What a great thing to do.
It was terrific. They talked about, what it takes to be a team player and what it takes about their winning effort, the commitment and dedication, and they got to share some of that with their former teachers. It was just a thrill.
Yeah.
I don't know who got more out of it, the players or the kids, because they both really had a terrific visit. It was a really nice thing to do.
That's it.
And it makes me think that whether it's a championship or not, we should probably do more of this kind of thing with other, whether it be clubs, theater groups, just to share with the younger kids and get them excited to come to the Farragut complex. And
actually, I'd seen one where the graduating seniors go up in their gowns to the elementary school and walk through. And
that's and
the kids get really jazzed about that.
They were thinking even the first day of school when the seniors have their kind of walk through the building, do that as well on the first day. So maybe make some more connections that way would be a nice thing moving forward. Also, we had our Project Share event in the Cochran Gym. Some nice pictures of the volunteers and the people who were there having dinner. 250 plus volunteers, over 780 meals were served, and it was just, as it always is, just an incredible show of community and kindness, and really just a spectacular event. The music, everything was just terrific, and I want to once again thank Jeannie Newman and all the work she puts into it for the community and for the homeless people who are fed that night, and to our entire community who come out and donate, whether it be time, money, all the above. But it's really a nice event, and high school students, not only our own, but from other local high schools as well, come out, so it's a great night. I know Lisa, Jody, and I had the opportunity to speak to the sixth graders and their grandfriends on their Grandfriend Day, the day before Thanksgiving break. It's one of their annual events. It's always just, again, an amazing day for our kids and for our grandfriends who do come out. I think I was told it was the largest group of grandfriends that were ever in the audience. Over 50 showed up. And
global warming.
Yeah, yeah.
It was really nice weather for them to travel.
Yeah,
And some of them
it
were
was.
Hastings High School grads.
Yes.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, so they got a chance to share their traditions and customs and pass down some family legacies, talk about the differences when they were in school and what they experienced. A great day. Barbara Richmond was the faculty coordinator of that, so thank you to Barbara and Gail and the middle school staff for putting all that together. It was a great event to be at. Here's a picture of some hot air balloons going off with Jill Chacher's science students. It's one of the ways they talk about some of the science principles, like between temperature, volume, and pressure. They get to heat up the balloons and launch them off. Kids have a good time with it, and it's a real nice way of connecting what they're learning in the classroom to being outside and experiencing it as well. And really, that's it. So we'll see you next Tuesday to do this all over again.
All righty. Okay, so let's start. There's no one in the audience. Oh, actually, we do have someone in the audience. Public comment, if you can make a public comment.
Wendy Nadich, 80 Circle Drive. So I came tonight because of the news of the changes that are going to be happening in, in our school community, and also it affects the community at large. And I just want to say that over the years that I've been involved in the district, not just as a board member, but as a parent and a PTSA president and all of that, I've never felt that the district was in better hands than in the last 4 years, and than under the current administration. So when my tenure on the board ended, I thought the atmosphere in the schools was so very positive, and I really felt that the administrators felt supported, and the teachers were excited about the different kinds of initiatives that were happening all over the district. And I just thought that for the first time, I felt that there was kind of a level of respect and understanding in the whole system. So I just want to say that I hope that in the months to come, as you go about hiring a new superintendent, that that you'll take note of the conditions that made the current atmosphere, at least as of when I left the board, that made the current atmosphere possible. Because I think that, I just think that it was a tremendously positive district, and I heard all about kinds of problems in other districts, and I never want to see those issues, arise here. I think the schools are just too important. So that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Thanks, Wendy.
Okay, we need to move on to business items. There are quite a few. Is there anything people need to pull out or have a question about? Go ahead.
I just wanted to have Maureen take us through the solar guarantee plans and tell us what you think of those in relation to the previous things that we've gotten and how that all works.
While she's looking that up, we did get an email from Ron about the timing on this.
Ron?
Ron Kamen.
Oh.
So we're talking about number 12 on the
Who's
business.
Ron? It's been a long time.
God, Gab.
And I think just one thing, initially there had been some discussion that this all needed to be installed by the end of this calendar year, but it does not, because I figured it was getting very close. They've been back and forth with state ed, and there's another round of things they had to put in, but so they're closing in on it, but we don't have that deadline of December 16th to install in order to save the price. So just as an update on that one.
What about for the federal and the
That
other?
they said that they would get the tax breaks, so,
They probably had to extend it with just, the timing.
yeah. So,
So the time criticality of it wasn't as bad as,
well, it has to be, I think it's been extended for the first 3 months
got it.
of 17, so it's close, but, I'm hoping as soon as they get it, Ellie had suggested that it would be able to, quickly go up once they put it in. It's not a big install, so hopefully that'll be
And so
good.
could you just say for public who might view this, what it is where we're actually putting solar?
Oh, so the plan is to put about 200,000 kilowatts of capacity on the roof of Hillside. It will take up most of the school's roofing, over the gym, over the main body of the building. So that it's kind of all over. And there won't be any trees that have to come down. They've designed it in that way, which did reduce the size of the project a little bit.
Which
but-
increased the cost just a bit. Is that what you wanted to touch on?
Well,
or-
it
yeah.
did, because as the project went down in
Right,
size,
it
it
had
came out
to,
of the
yeah.
tier that it was initially priced in,
Yep.
and that's what caused the price change.
Right.
Right, but a big part of that was the fact that they discovered late in the game that they couldn't do anything in this building.
Exactly.
No, actually, that was a separate price. I mean, the two contracts were different. The reason it's not on this building is because the structural integrity couldn't be guaranteed.
But they also had to reduce Hillside as well because of the
They reduced
shading and
Hillside
things.
because
Once
they-
they got into the design, that kind of changed the scale of the project.
But they were priced separately and evaluated separately.
Yes. So basically, as people who were involved in trying to get a solar project off the ground here know that we had initially signed into a contract that was a much larger scale, and the numbers were a bit lower at the time. We felt
6.5 cents.
Yeah, it was
Starting
6.5 cent starting price on the kilowatt. With I think the growth factor was the same, the 2.5% price escalator. So. But as the project scaled back, we kind of always were looking at a point of our goal was to at least stay cost neutral, or I think the board was comfortable with it if we thought going in the first few years there may be a few $1,000s that potentially could be, more to get our electric this way than through our traditional means. That would still long term we felt pretty comfortable with some of the increases we've seen. And the unpredictability of the cost of what we've paid over the years, that over the course of time that it would be cost neutral, so it would not cost us more. Because that is the problem with solar, especially for us. We do purchase our power much cheaper than, say, a homeowner, because we purchase it through NYPA and we get government ratings. So in order for solar projects to compete, the pricing, it gets a lot trickier. It kind of seems like, oh, well, we have the roof space, it should make sense. But we already pay a much cheaper price per kilowatt hour than we all do at home. So that always makes these projects a bit tricky. But that being said, I mean, the good news is, although we ended up having to pay more than our original price was at the larger scale project, NYPA, who is our energy provider, is already anticipating large increases going up in the future. So we're already seeing kind of the benefit where I think when we entered into looking at the solar, our electric price had been at an all-time low.
Yeah.
It had dipped, and I think the polar
Well, it came
vortex,
down,
right, of 2 years before we were paying a much higher price. So the way it compares to the original, I mean, obviously it's a bit more, but I still think our exposure is a lot less because we're only having the amount of energy we're receiving from this is much smaller than our original. So even if it were to be a little bit higher, we're only looking at a few $1,000s a year potential that it could possibly cost us more to do the solar. That's kind of so that's kind of having a smaller project from that. It gives us less exposure if, if we were to have ended up paying less through our current provider. But I think it's, I actually think we'll be good now in terms of that.
Okay.
The only other question, I think the budget transfer was still in there on the survey. Was there survey?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, on the business items? Yeah, we ended up, we did pull that. So I guess that budget, I
I
didn't
think
pull.
you pulled
Right,
the
but the budget
proposal,
transfer.
But not the budget transfer? Okay,
yeah.
so we can table
We'll
that
table
as
that.
well. It was that, let me look at it. Was that the only item on there? On the
I
budget
think so.
transfer.
That was the only one I saw.
Yes, so, okay, we'll also table that item as well, the budget transfer. Thank you.
Lisa, did you have
So
something
that's
else?
number one.
No, everything's
Okay.
answered.
Okay. All right, in that case, we're going to table item 1, which was budget transfer. Can I get a consent agenda on items 2 through 15? Yeah,
So moved.
and a second? So that's Jody and Lisa. And all those in favor? Okay. All right, moving on to the CSE and CPSE placements. Can I get a motion to approve? And a second? Okay. I assume there are no questions or comments? It's very hard to do that on this thing. All those in favor? Okay. All right. Personnel appointments. Anything we need to pull out? Okay, I think we can do the Schedule Bs at the same time then as the regular items 1 through 8. There's 1 through 10 under Schedule B. So can I get a motion to approve both the initial items as well as the Schedule B?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Okay. And all those in favor? Okay. All right. Moving on, we had the minutes from the... No, did we have minutes? November 8th meeting. I'm looking for the date. I'm like, no, it wasn't the 29th. That's today. So from the November 8th meeting, did anybody have changes or they wanted to make on those minutes?
Janine, I know I had sent you a change. Did that change get in? Because I didn't. You did put it in. Okay, cool.
Just for clarity, can you just say what it was? Like, is it what we saw or is it updated from there?
No, it's what you saw was done. Let me
Okay.
just double check it. I can't open the minutes.
Okay.
Oh, sure, sorry.
All right. Well, assuming Lisa didn't change the world.
It was just a little bit of clarification of a comment made by Lisa Lipton.
Okay.
I can't remember what section it was in.
Yeah.
Open them either for me. Let me go back again.
What are we looking for? What's Maureen looking for?
The change. Okay, you know, if you could just send it, I think
Should we
it's
circle
fine.
back to this? I'll keep scrolling and we can come back to this.
Okay, all right, well, you know, okay, we'll come back to that one then, the minutes. We can talk about the committee reports. We had a finance committee meeting, Gab and Maureen and Roy and I. We went over the sort of anticipated budgeting factors for the coming year. We looked at, Maureen gave us an update on enrollment, which is steady to slightly up. We also have sort of anticipate that we'll need either 2 to 4 new sections for next year. The 5th grade had a bunch of kids move in, so we're up to 24 students in each of those classes, so we'll probably need a section there going into 6th grade. The 4th grade has also picked up a few students as we've gone into this fall, so that one is another one we have to watch. I think the kindergarten was one that was a good chance that the
We're going to
kindergarten
have to add one for first grade next year.
Yeah, so this
They're already
year's
at-
I think we're
kindergarten.
even at like 4 to 5 sections now. I'm looking
What,
at.
how
Was
many
it,
kids are in kindergarten?
We had like a late influx, I think. The classes are about 22, 23, and we usually get a jump from kindergarten to first grade, at least last 4 or 5 years. That seems to be.
5 or 6?
There's 5 sections now in kindergarten,
Right.
in 5 and 6th grade, so we're going to have to add a 6th one, I believe, for 6th grade next year. And I think we need to put a contingency in the kindergarten for 6 sections as well. It's been going every other year, 5, 6, 5, 6, 5, 6. And just to have it in the budget, it's better to put it in and not have to use it than not have it when you need it.
Not to mention some new rooms.
And we have to
Yeah.
look at how to
Space.
capture some rooms back too.
The high school will also be up a section
Yeah.
at the 9th grade.
They're going
High
to the-
school.
We'll be up a
Probably up a
section at
section.
9th grade.
The 9th graders.
9th,
Ninth
because
grade.
their graduating senior class is being replaced by a, you know,
larger-
just the way
larger,
it's kind of all
We
concentrated
pick up some
there.
students going into high school as well.
Yeah, so.
Yeah, this is a very small high school class that's graduating.
Right.
So we also talked about changes to the tax reserve fund and the retirement reserve fund for this current year. There's about $800,000. Is that still the amount being used from the tax fund to
Yes.
pay off settlements there?
Well, once we get the, I mean, that's what the attorney,
Right.
they're in the final negotiations, but they had given us a range.
But that's
to
what, so we
plan
would
on.
anticipate using that?
Right,
You know, during
yes.
this year. From my notes, I couldn't remember, was that we also were going to use $700,000 from the retirement reserve, which is money set aside to pay retirement benefit obligations to the state retirement fund.
Looks like we will be using potentially more based upon if we have to add the fifth section, like I said, now at least 700,000 though.
Okay, and is that for this current year's payment?
It will be for next current year.
Next year, okay.
It'll be part of the budget next year. We would
Okay.
be using
All right, that's what I thought, okay.
that to pay off our obligation now.
Okay. We also, this time of year, the teacher retirement system and the employee retirement system both supply estimates on what the contribution rates will be. The TRS is anticipated to be down 1%, which is nice, but it actually means that we still have about the same cash amount out, given that salaries will increase next year. So the increase in salaries and the reduced percentage, you end up basically with the same size payment. But ERS is anticipated to be a flat, so basically an unchanged percentage contribution.
Say what ERS is?
ERS is the employment retirement system, and those are the benefits for clerical, custodial, and teacher aides, people, sort of everybody except the teachers and administrators. And so that one, the percentage is flat, but again, given the rising salaries, that indicates approximately a $50,000 additional cost next year for that line item. In health payments, we still belong with Swiss Chip, which is a Southern Westchester consortium, and they're anticipating a 6 to 8% increase.
And that actually, I was telling Roy, they actually sent something saying it could be up to 11, but they're trying to get it down. But I'm using 8 right now.
Okay, so that's about a
What is that
300
for?
Health insurance.
health insurance. That one probably, so that increase translates to about a $300,000 increase in the budget. So there's a lot of pressures on the budget, I think, is sort of the bottom line that we have to watch, and also the use of reserves, which is something that it's the reason they're there, but we're going to have to use some of them up. Another thing that we talked about were changes in BOCES. We use them for technology support, and we have typically used, sort of had a person assigned to us. And I forgot who made the regulatory changes, or whether it was just something, I thought it was a state. A state was requiring them to send their personnel out in a different way. So instead of sending one person to Hastings who can be here for 5 days, they're going to send a couple people, so that you rotate, so that their sort of
To make it
expertise
COSTER
is...
compliant, it's not state aidable unless it's a true shared service.
service.
And it has to be a 60-40 split in order for the state to recognize it as a shared service.
Okay, so we
BOCES
have to
had
actually
them
share
correct
bodies and not
with
just
other
share the
districts. So we would have
mechanism.
different people here
Right.
helping.
So-
Is that the 7,500 I was questioning you?
No,
That's
this
different.
is the people who are kind of the closet, like the actual infrastructure. I mean, they do everything, but the kind of break fix and higher level network
They
administrators.
manage the infrastructure,
That's a different cost. That's
and they
right.
do break fix.
Yes.
They do it?
Break fix, day-to-day
Right.
breaking.
You break it, I fix it.
computers,
Yeah, and every day,
printers.
we do have they do a lot,
Yeah.
right? Like just,
Yeah.
all the users, and you can log on one morning and sometimes the email's down, there's this, they're here to
Yeah.
take care of.
Support,
Help desk.
just basic tech
It's
support.
very important.
So we don't anticipate a change in price, but it's definitely a change in
Actually,
staffing.
Jeremy and I had to go today because they're rolling it out, kind of their new model. So it looks as though it would be similar, like in price, probably. They're trying to kind of aim to keep it at the same cost, which makes sense. It's
Right.
really just different people. So, so hopefully it's going to be hard because we're accustomed to having our own people here every day. I think that's like a change definitely for staff. They're, very familiar. And although there'll be still the same people, just more of them.
Yeah.
So it'll be less, like every day you kind of come in and have the same people. But
Those are an adjustment,
doing it
but
through
not
BOCES,
necessarily
we receive a lot of state aid, as you know, and it's really, it's very difficult to get away from them because although, as an example, we get like about 50 to 60% reimbursement on those services. So even if, like where are we going to go and get all the staff to work for us for that, 100, like net cost for us to have 3 people is like $150,000. And that like includes, 2.5 full-time people.
Right.
So that's the change there.
Okay. We also talked about the upcoming budget information sessions that we've scheduled for December 8th is the first one, and the second one is January 12th. These are modeled not on the original Citizens Budget Advisory Committee, which we lovingly called CBAC, but these are more aligned to what we did a couple of years ago. The initial CBAC was a commitment that we asked for from anybody who was on it, that they commit to coming to several meetings, coming to the board presentations when the budget was presented, and it was a very small group, so we tried it a different way a couple years ago. But this all originally started under Superintendent Shaps in like 2008. When we had our interim, we went to expanding the group and reducing the number of meetings. This is similar to that. I think we're sort of continue with that because it's hard to get people to commit to coming to 4 meetings. And I think we may want to do that when we have very specific questions we'd like people to research and think about and answer as a community. But sort of for the moment, it's really important that we get people to understand what the dynamics of budgeting are, so that when we talk about it, there's more understanding of where the sort of pushes and pulls on the system are. So Gab and Maureen and Roy have all been sort of looking at the information that we had for the last few go-rounds, and updating that information so that it's ready to roll out. So there are a lot of topics. I don't know if you guys want to mention what topics if you've broken it down into 2 different sessions. Or
No, basically been looking at sort of what are the things from the last presentation, and what are the things we want to update sort of and bring back into that. Some of the things that are changing are, is there any impact on us from the reval? Because that's a more recent thing that's happened in terms of everybody's taxes getting revaled. Also, just looking at some of the things about how we've spent money on various programs over the years. In particular, we feel like people are going to have some questions on how much money has been spent on testing, Common Core, some of the federal and state mandates that we have, and we've always kind of addressed that, but it's just updating it with some of the newer things that are coming. And then also looking at things like some of the things that aren't necessarily mandates, but that we've also had to spend money on, such as security, which has been a big expense over the past few years, and looking at technology in the classrooms and how that's been sort of addressed. And I think that the other thing we probably want to do is talk a bit about population trends. I think you've done that in the past, and we want to probably, just give everybody sort of a reintroduction to sort of how that's trending over time. I think one of the things we did decide is that we probably need to do an update on the bond and where we are with the construction, but we would do that at a separate meeting. That this one we would focus much more just on straight budget issues.
Right. Okay.
Can I ask you a question about it? Is there talk about the tax cap and the implications?
Yes.
And okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
It kind of covers, I mean, it's pretty broad. Gab had pulled and Roy had worked on kind of different things that we find that people do find, in the past people seem to be interested in, and then also added some additional different kind of things this year. But like I think you said, a lot of the enrollment changes and how we spend our money, and kind of looking at, in some ways, how we compare on like co-curricular and athletics, and even just like breaking down different areas of the budget. Right, Gap, you wanted me to kind of run some of the comparables and some of the things that we run here, and the district, kind of what we priorities or the cost, or maybe some things that people would be interested in looking into or adding, kind of.
I took a look at a couple of different things to kind of get a feeling for sort of what are the questions people might have now about the budget, including the survey you guys did, and just went through that and said, like, what are some of the hot topics for people. And it's interesting, it seems like co-curricular versus athletics is always a hot topic, how much we spend. Are we not spending enough on the arts? Are we spending too much on sports and things like that? So just kind of giving people a sort of a general idea how we do that.
Or how we like how our
some of
money
the other questions were, like I mentioned, how much are we spending on testing, and how do we, are we budgeting our priorities? And that's kind of the lens that I wanted to take on it, is sort of how does our budget represent how we want to sort of shape the district?
As the board put together, if we hit the cap or we're close to the cap, the priority hit list for what starts to go or discussed first, has that come up before?
It sort of changes every year. I mean, it really, because every year we're going to have different things that we have to look at. Some years there will be spikes in enrollment that will cause us to do that. Other years we have a spike in
health insurance,
employee things. And some of those things we get to sort of set aside. Like there is a provision within the tax cap that if you have something that's over.
On the TRS, 2%. 2%.
If the teacher's retirement system mandated pay-in goes too high, you can sort of put some of that aside and not have it included in your tax cap. But yeah, you're right. I mean, there definitely needs to be some projection out, and And we've done that. And actually, one of the slides in the last one is sort of looking at salaries, which are primary cost. I mean, that's 75% of the budget, and saying if you project them out, where are we vis-a-vis the budget cap in any given year?
And using also, like, how we've been using our reserves, and we are, I think, at least initially, talking about using a big chunk this year because we know we're going to need to. As we did know, like I was saying to Roy, when we looked at the projections, what is interesting is you can see that based upon some of our earlier, it shows that this was kind of this year and next year, we knew we were going to have to start really, getting those reserves in order to kind of maintain what we have, and then potentially if there was additional things that we would need. So we're there, I mean, this year we took down over $1.2 million in fund balance, and we're anticipating taking down $2 to $3 million to get through next year, just to kind of maintain what we have. But there will be a breaking point. I think it's good to know, because then, like, in probably 2 years, you're going to either have to have a large override of potentially 5 or 7, 8% in taxing. I mean, that's just the reality, because we are using $3 or $4 million of fund balance to balance our budget. And 1% on the tax rate here is about $350,000. So if you were to increase 3, that's 10%. Like if you needed to fill that gap. I'm not saying being alarmist, we've been good, but that's why we've been kind of cautious about our use of fund balance, and maybe probably because of the tax cap, we've been ultra conservative, like in our use of that, because, kind of knowing that the tax cap is difficult to stay under, and you do need a supermajority to override it. And it's not as easy. I mean, Scarsdale tried to get a supermajority and they couldn't get it. And I think they're an example of a school district that's very supportive of, so I think it's something that it's not always that easy to override a budget.
Doug, but were you asking whether we have sort of a list of the, like what programs would be the first?
The low-hanging fruit,
the
the lowest hanging fruit, I guess.
I think what's happened is that in the last several years, we haven't had to come up with that list, because during the process, we've known that we've been able to stay within the cap, so we didn't have to kind of come up with what we would.
We did it, I mean, many
But I think we've
years
done a
ago,
lot of
but
those things already.
I
I
think
think we've done those.
But many years ago, we were in that position, and there was a point where we were coming up with a list and having meetings to talk about.
But we're going to include the list that, because even sometimes I forget the things we've already done, like to where we are now, like, I mean, maybe we may have to bring back the bus monitors someday, but, we had eliminated the bus monitors one budget because that was something that we were trying to stay under. We didn't have the tax cap, but it was like 2008, and you were not passing a budget that had more than like a 2%, 3% increase. We reduced our busing, we reduced a lot of our routes. Like, I think we did do a lot.
But in terms of.
No, I know now. I mean, it would be. I think that's a community thing, but it's
been a
just.
few
I just
years.
think we took away so much of the low-hanging fruit. I don't know if there's anything left in that bucket. It would be now like.
That's why, that's a good
right?
qualifier, the lower hanging
It
fruit.
would be programs. It would be
Not the low anymore, but
I'm just saying,
lower.
all the low-hanging fruit, I think,
Has
pretty
been
much has
picked.
been picked.
Yeah.
We've reduced our custodial staff. We reduced support staff. We did a lot of those things over the years. So.
It becomes the difficult decisions about program or
It's definitely
class
programs,
size, things that we don't really want to have to compromise on.
Okay. So,
All right, one more question. I think it sounds great. Do you think we can get a notice out in the next couple of days? Because I think the only notice has been the whole budget calendar, so I don't know that people know how informative this could be. So maybe a notice.
I think
to
the
see if
email
you
you
can
sent
make
it
it.
was in.
I think it'd be worthwhile to send a new one.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think, the closer you are, and you can maybe put in the teasers. Don't you want to know?
Well, it is next week, right?
Yeah, it's next Thursday.
Yeah. So, all right, I'll take care of that.
And it'll be in this room, Eileen, or you want to have it upstairs?
I was
Library.
going to ask
library.
where we're going to have it.
Right, it's the location
For
of
the
the
library, I
library.
think it's a nicer venue for that.
Yeah. Okay. All right, I'll send that out. All right, so policy.
Policy.
Do you want to talk about that?
Do you want me to go through the policies we're actually going to?
I know, we'll go back to minutes after we finish the committee reports.
I mean, what I have to say mostly has to do with the policies that are either up for a first or second read. Do you want to
Do you
just
wanna hold
do
on
that
then?
now or
Yeah.
hold on to it? How do you want to do it?
Why don't we address the policies that are up for first read under that section? If there's anything else?
Then I will defer my comments to a later moment.
All right, then. Then we will go back to minutes. Did you find what you were looking at?
I did find it. Did you find it too, Jenny? It's a,
Requested, there was a lively discussion about the use and review and benefits of the Chromebooks, and Board Member Lipton asked that I add, Lipton noted that we need to have formal protocols in place, some pursuant to Board Ed Policy 4220, for new initiatives and purchases, such as the Hastings High School Chromebook initiative, to ensure that these new efforts are effective educationally and financially.
Okay. I think one comment I would make about that is that that policy also states that it's up to the superintendent to define the initiatives that fall under that policy. That being said, we absolutely want to update, and on anything we do, even if we're not going to call it an official initiative, so like how is iReady doing and how's the Chromebook doing, and you talked about there's a survey going out to the students and this faculty and to talk about how it's going. So we're kind of in the process on that, but it's a little hard to. It's a little soon to come back on it in some ways. So it'd be good to do it in mid-year and maybe at the end of the year, kind of follow up on that one. So, okay. Okie doke. Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes from November 8 with that modification?
So moved.
And a second?
second.
And all those in favor? Okay. So policy. All right, so Donna, I think it's, our student unfortunately is sick tonight, so we're not going to hear from Parker. And you want to go on then to the old policies? These are up for the second read?
Second reads, yep.
Sorry, Eileen, can we just go back for a moment? I just have a procedural question to ask. There was a study that came out a few weeks ago from the Johns Hopkins School of Education that was not positive about iReady, and I would like to bring that into the discussion, and really just a procedure. Is that something that should happen with Jeremy in a during the day discussion? Is that something that happens here? Is that a curriculum committee discussion? Because I think it needs to be had soon, because I assume there'll be a second administration sometime in the next 2 months.
I think, well, one of the things I was going to talk about is that I did go to, last Tuesday night, the Hillside Liaison meeting, at which the principal, Amy Cases, presented a whole series of questions and answers to those questions that people and parents had about the implementation, or it's not the running, it's the...
Administration.
Thank you. The administration of the iReady tests. And it was a really great presentation. I mean, the meeting went until like 8:45. Took up like 45 minutes of that meeting. So it was a really helpful presentation. I think it'd be great if we can, and I talked to Roy about getting a similar kind of feedback loop from the faculty at the middle school, so we can get a full presentation, but and have Amy's PowerPoint be available. It addressed a lot of the questions that people had. It also really was presented from the teacher's perspective. Amy reiterated several times that iReady is not an administrative tool, it's a teacher's tool, and the responses of the teachers and the reactions that the teachers had and their experiences, things that they would tweak, things that they would do differently in the second go-round.
Were there teachers there at the meeting?
Paula Higgins was there. She's a third grade teacher. She's the head of the third grade team. She did share an anecdote. They were very positive on its use. They felt that the information came back very quickly. She shared an anecdote about one student that they were really struggling to figure out what was delaying and holding back the child's reading skills, that they had thought it was some sort of a decoding issue, but after the administration of the iReady, one of the nice things was that the teachers really felt that getting it back very quickly, that information is basically, kid takes a test, there's the feedback on it, and that they were really able to use that to make changes to what the interventions they were working on that child with, and sort of within a month that kid's reading level had gone up four levels, so it was really, she was very positive on it, felt that the third grade team had made really good use out of the things that they came back. So that was one anecdote that was shared by a teacher there. The point being that I think it would be really useful for everybody to have that, and to hear those questions, what modifications they would make. There's apparently, designed into the test, there's a little mini break that's like a computer game that kids played, and they were like, we don't need this. Let's shorten up the time of the test. The kids can go through it. It was kind of unnecessary. So they also, because they can kind of stand over the kids and watch what's going on, they can get a feel for what some of those questions were, and the teachers felt that the questions were sort of much more age appropriate, say, than what they've seen on the state test. So it was a very positive dialogue about that one. Certainly, when we talked about that, when you do that with the middle school, I think that'd be a great time to bring that in as well.
We have a copy of the report that
yeah.
Lisa's referring to. And there's other reports that are positive. There's some that are negative as well.
So when would be, because I
think when we have that report out,
information, and I just think it needs to go into our decision-making about going forward, so I guess I'd say sooner rather than later.
well, I think, we're going to be using iReady for the whole year, so I don't know that it needs to happen at the next meeting, but as soon as we get the feedback from the middle school, sort of in a similar package to what Amy did, and we can see the teachers' feedback on it, then I think we can talk about the whole thing. So if it's not before the holidays, I think it'll be shortly after the holidays. And that can certainly be, part of that discussion.
Has there been a discussion about revising the full year in light of the Hopkins study?
I have not heard that. I also, having read the Hopkins study...
It's a discussion we should have. I mean, we may come out to say, continue it, but the findings were striking, and I think it's important to, I mean, it's...
you have your viewpoint.
Paper. I just think we
It
need...
sounds like there's a number of studies out there too, so maybe having Jeremy come in and help us with a review of the literature would be good. Sort of a balanced review of the literature, and having that dovetail with feedback from, Amy and Gail and from the grades and the teachers that are using it would be useful because...
Sure.
I mean, I haven't read the Hopkins study, obviously, but
the conclusion
we don't know
of
how
the
much of it is situational to where they did their study.
No, the conclusion of the Hopkins study was saying that they can find no independent study to support iReady's data, and they actually said that they were troubled by how prevalent iReady is without independent validation. And it's something we see a lot, that the validation tends to come from the vendor's own studies. So they were saying there's no independent. And then on top of that, they went into some data that I had seen that iReady talks about its predictive ability on New York State tests, and iReady's own data, it says it's very good at predicting proficiency. That means a 1 or 2 versus a 3 or 4. I think it has an 87% accuracy, but when you come down to the 1, 2, 3, or 4, the accuracy drops to 68%, meaning that it's off by a full level or whatever, a 1, 2, 3, or 4. It's off for about 1 out of 3 kids. Saying whatever, you're a 3 when you're really a 2, or you're a 3 when you're... But that was the conclusion of the Hopkins study.
So it sounds like there's a lot of very specific information to go into there, and I think it would be good if we could kind of actually all review it before we kind of have that kind of detailed conversation.
No, and that's what I was asking you, is when's the right time to do this?
Can I just have a question, because I didn't think that the choice to use or not use iReady was something that the board was directly approving, that it was an administrative decision. I mean, I understand us discussing it and wanting to know how it's going, but I'm just a little confused as to the need to sort of do it very quickly so that we can tell the administrators to either continue or not continue something that I didn't think we had approved or not approved in the first place. I mean, the administration, along with the teachers, are the ones that decided they wanted to
Right, and so you're talking about just sort of a discussion about the issues around using iReady, not a decision to,
in light of,
like, use or not use. I think,
Okay.
well, I mean...
Pardon me?
You're talking about it, sort of more information about iReady rather than a discussion about do we use it or not use it this year.
Yeah, no, I think let's get the information out there, and then whoever the proper authorities are in our chain of command can then take that information, process it, and make the decisions.
Okay. And I think, as I think I said, we are going to have to get the sort of similar feedback loop finished from the middle school. Once we have both those things, we can have that discussion, and I'm not sure which date it's going to be, but we can schedule, an hour before a meeting if we want to have it separately and have Jeremy come in, have a work session where we talk about it, or it can be part of a regular meeting that starts at 7:30 and, goes later. So I would guess, I don't know who's going to be watching before Christmas, but the Christmas break. It might be better to do it in January, but once we get into the next year, lots of things start happening as well with the budget, and so it's a little bit harder. But do it around one of our board meetings. Okay, so at this point, we are policies for the second read.
Okay, I'll just say a little bit about each one because the when we put these up for the first read, it was election night, and we sort of tabled having much of any discussion. So if anyone has any questions, they can ask. But the first policy up for second read is the student attendance policy, 5100, and this one there were changes made upon the recommendation of NYSBA, and it had to do with language relating to homeless children. They added language also on parental responsibility to notify the school of a child's absence, and removed language on specific amount of time that a child must miss in order to be denied ability to participate in extracurricular activities. So those were the changes on that one. I don't know if anyone has any questions. If not, I will move on to 2320, which was, hold on.
Special meetings of the board.
Special meetings of the board, yes. And 2320, we revised the public notice to include the use of email and websites, since the policy was done before. That sort of thing was something that people did.
Email?
Well, before anyone was actually using email, not before it existed.
It had stone and chisel in it.
Yeah. 4531 is the field trip policy, and with that one we were considering a revision that would allow parents to drive home teammates from a game or practice when proper consent was given, and so we put in language for that, and we also removed the reference in the policy to cheerleaders, since we don't have cheerleaders. Then we have policy 0115, which is our bullying and harassment policies, and the mental and physical abilities, the different categories that are talked about in the policy in terms of what what would be considered bullying or harassment. We wanted to make sure that there's sort of a long list separated by commas of all the different types of bullying and harassment, and we just wanted to make sure in the 3 places in the policy that it was listed that it was consistent. And the one that wasn't was there was one that talked about mental and physical abilities, and sometimes it just said, sometimes that was listed, sometimes it wasn't, so we just standardized that. And then we have 5152, which is non-resident students. This was another policy where NYSBA had sent us an update. This is a recommended policy with a recommended update. And again, the changes here had to do with changes in the state laws regarding homelessness and homeless students. And so NYSBA recommended that we modify the policy to make clear that homeless students entitled to attend school district would not be denied entrance under a non-resident student policy. So we adapted our language of our policy to take into account NYSBA's requested changes on that front. And then the last one that's up for a second read tonight is 2120, which is, there we go. 2120.1, candidates and campaigning. Excuse me, this one was also based on a NYSBA update. This is another optional policy and a recommended update. And they issued a clarification pertaining to electioneering and improper advocacy, and so they were talking about policy 2120. We had that language in our policy 2121, so we made the changes in there, and we also combined our 2120 and our 2120 and 2120.1, because one of them was like sort of basically a tiny little paragraph, and so we put them all together into one policy. So those are the changes. When we did the first reads for the last meeting, they were all redlined so you could actually see what we were changing, and in the attachments for tonight's meeting, the redlining is all removed so that you can see them in their final form. So does anyone have any questions? If not,
Okay. In that case, can I get a motion to approve these 6 policies that Donna just discussed? And a second?
Second.
And all those in favor? Okay.
in addition to that, policy 4315.1 was a policy that we were recommending removing, as it's a policy on prevention instructions and prevention instruction and aids. And we felt that there was nothing in the policy that wasn't covered in state regulations or state law, and that it wasn't really serving a useful purpose for us to have a special policy sort of calling this out as something. So we were recommending that we remove this policy.
Can I have a motion to remove?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
And all those in favor? Okay.
And then lastly, we have 3 policies that we started to review at our last policy committee meeting, so we have on the agenda now for a first read, and they can, unless we have to make substantial changes, they can go up for a second read at our meeting next week. These 3 policies are 1900, which is our parent and family engagement policy, and the only change in that policy was that there was one place that the parents were referred to as natural parents, and we just struck the word natural. So that was a very minimal change. Then there's 9320, which is, there it is, drug-free workspace. And in this one, we modified the section regarding controlled substances that would allow a teacher to have in their possession a controlled substance that had been prescribed for them, provided it was in the original packaging and was for their own use. And then the third policy that is on there for a first read is 2230, which is it's duties of the district clerk and the school physician and the district treasurer, I believe, are all three.
Tax collector.
And the tax collector. They're all in one policy. And we went through that policy and got feedback from the parties involved and the school nurses in terms of our district physician, and we just sort of updated it to reflect what we actually consider to be the duties of each of the people in those offices, and removed things that were outdated and no longer appropriate. So as you look through that, again, the ones for the first read, everything's redlined, so you can see everything that we've changed or struck from those 3 policies. And
Does it make sense on that one to come up with a new name? I'm just thinking, because since there are
so
more
many duties.
roles than just the clerk.
yeah, the actual name of the policy is longer than that, Eileen.
Oh, okay.
It mentions them all. It's just
remember.
It does, when you click on it, it mentions
yeah,
it all,
it's just that,
Fine.
That's it.
I got bored typing.
Gotcha. That's what I was
You know, it's
Yeah.
all there.
Yeah.
It's all there, every single
Okay.
one of them. So just to finish up my, where we were with the policy committee meeting, we've only had the one NISBA update so far this year, so what we've been continuing to do from meeting to meeting at this point is just go through the policies that Lisa had identified over the summer as things that she had questions about. And and most of the ones that I just mentioned that are up either for second reads or the first reads are ones that were raised that way. The couple that I said came through NISBA, were the ones that came through NISBA. So in addition to the ones that are on there for first or second read, there's some that we are still in the process of reviewing as part of the committee. There are a couple policies that outline what the roles and responsibilities are of the school board, and Lisa's reviewing what, she said that there are 42, I think, things in the
Yeah, the
state
New York
law?
State law lists like 42.
42 things, and we've highlighted 3 of them in these policies, and so she's going to review and bring back to the committee sort of what that list is and whether she thinks there are more that we should be including, and so we're going to sort of discuss that more before we bring something forward. There are also a couple policies where Roy is going to check with our attorney regarding the language. There's one having to do with sexual harassment, where there's no language talking about a hostile work environment. It's specifically talking about sexual harassment. So we were going to go back to our attorney to get to see what language they might suggest us adding to cover the rest of that. And what else do we have that is still in the works? Additional language, first read, attorney. There were some that we looked at and felt they were fine the way they were, so we didn't do anything else. But I think actually those are the only ones that are outstanding right now. So we have another 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 policies that we're going to be reviewing at our next meeting on December 19th, in addition to the sort of the holdover ones that we're still in the process of looking at. And that's where we are.
Good.
Thank you, Donna.
All right.
Thank you, Jody.
A lot of policy talk.
Yeah, a lot of policy talk.
Seriously.
Okay, so we have no one in the public right now, so we'll move that section. Oh, sorry, new business. That's policy first read. We just did that one. Right, so second public comment is what we're up to. There's no one here, so we'll move on. Board of Education comments. Anybody have anything?
Yeah, I just want to add something to the announcements from earlier on. I think next Wednesday evening, the 7th of December, is the Tucker Lecture.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen anything.
It came out
It
this
just came out today.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Came out today.
Right,
Yeah.
that was important.
It's an unusual topic.
Yeah.
She's an Armenian scholar.
Yeah.
This is Susie May Rotra's sister.
Oh, really?
That's why I was wondering if it was
Yeah.
related to her. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, anything else? One other thing that, and I sort of alluded to at the beginning of the meeting, just so that people know, we're going to have to get started on the superintendent search process very quickly. And when I've been thinking about it, I mentioned it to Doug today when we spoke, I would really like to have one of the new board members chair that effort. I think it would be really helpful to have sort of some fresh eyes in there and some fresh focus. So I would, rather than having the board president, which is sort of more typical. So I'd like to sort of put that one out there, and you guys can duke it out and decide who's going to do it. But I think that will be beneficial to the effort. So we can work those details out, but tag, you're it. So you'll have to get going. So anything else wants to add? All right, then we are adjourned for this evening. Oh, wait, no. Can I get a motion to adjourn? I'll take Lisa and I'll take Tim. All right.